Finding Common Battlegrounds is an attempt by two brothers, one conservative, the other progressive, to have civil conversations about politics with a little help from their friends.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Finding Common Battlegrounds. This is the podcast for the civilized to hear both sides of the argument. This isn't an echo chamber. We're here about hearing both sides and finding out and hoping that we actually have a lot more in common than we have apart from each other. I'm always surprised at how much we do have in common than we're actually different from each other. And so something that I don't think the media emphasizes enough. So today, we're going to be talking about, is the country going in the right direction? So we're going to jump into this. And if you're new to this format, Ryan and Josh Cragen, brothers, one's a liberal, one is a conservative, and they have each got questions prepared up beforehand that they're going to try to get the other to agree to. So first, a word from our sponsor. I was just thinking about something I was thinking about the other day of like a pitch for it was the Lux bidets, right? So bidets. So like most people shower like once a day, right? You know, hopefully. And I was thinking like whenever I'm in the shower, I'm like washing out the cracks. And the thing is like, yeah, you should. Your butt's kind of a gross place. And you're like, the bidet is like an extra shower and in that area. It's like, and I'm thinking you need all the showering you can get down there. So I think it's like,
absolutely,
it's all good. Don't smear it around. Wash it out.
We need to do another giveaway. We need to.
I should reach out to them and see if they'll give us another one. Okay, I'll make a note to do that. Cool.
Yeah, we'll get another giveaway going here. Let me just a little more background. So we've had surveys of, is the country going in the right direction? And this has been, I'm not trying to bring this, I think it's at an all-time low. And now I don't have the stat in front of me, but it's something like 80, it's in the 70s or 80s. People are saying it's going in the wrong direction. Now that's not recent in that it's been going down for a long time. It was saying it was going in the wrong. I think the majority of America was saying it was going in the wrong direction under Trump, but that stat continues to go down under Biden. And so the question is like, okay, what if it's going in the wrong direction, then what is the right direction? Like what does the country need? And we've all prepared some questions. I find that the easiest thing to do is to just jump in with one of these questions.
Let me just jump in real quick. I was going to start with this question, but I decided not to. Maybe the right direction would be not nuclear war.
Since I don't agree. No, no agreement on this one.
No.
Yeah. Because Tom threw this topic out a couple of days ago, and ever since then, like every day, the headlines have been, "We're getting close to nuclear war, nuclear holocaust on the horizon." Well, you know, maybe if that wasn't the headline, maybe people would feel a little better about things. Thoughts, opinions?
Well, is that your first point, or are we just like?
No, I was going to pitch that softball, but it would have been a little too easy. But I thought it was worth bringing up.
Yeah.
But isn't that, I mean, I think it's funny that like everyone's like, oh yeah, it's going in the wrong direction. Yeah. And I think we could universally agree that nuclear war, I mean, yeah, it's probably, I think I did read something that it's a bigger threat now. The last time it was like this high of a threat was like the 60s.
Yeah.
And
Cuban Missile Crisis.
Probably, probably Bay of Pigs stuff. And you're like, okay, well, what? Right. Well, what is, if we turn the car around, where are we going? Right. Which direction do we need to go? But all right, I'm going to dive in with a question. We'll start with Josh's question for Ryan. Ryan, would you agree that we probably need a recession in a really bad way, as horrible as that will be? That's very interesting.
So my approach tonight, because our topic's really broad, my approach tonight is I thought this first question would be interesting, but we could probably find agreement. The second one's going to be a little harder. The third one, Ryan's going to pitch a fit, but that's how we're doing it tonight.
Isn't that how most of our questions go?
Yeah, usually.
Yeah, wait for my third question. I'm doing the same thing.
Nice. But this I thought was an interesting idea. Nobody wants a recession, but I was listening to this rich money guy, and he was saying that historically we've had a recession every 7 years. Like with, that's the longest we usually go is like 7 years and we'll have a recession, but we've gone like 18 years or something.
2007 we had a recession, so it'd be like how long? 13 to 15 years, something like that.
15 years, right? So that's almost double what it normally is. And I was thinking about why I don't think we're going in the right direction. And I was at the supermarket the other day looking at tri-tip. That's my favorite cut of meat to smoke. It used to be like $15 not that long ago when I started smoking. It was $75 for a not good looking tri-tip.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why I don't think things are going in the right direction. So as horrible as the recession would be, because when I had my business in 2008, when that recession, I lost a third of my clients in a 2-week period, just gone, because people lost their jobs and it was that bad. So it's going to kick my butt to have a recession, but we need one because we need to reset the inflation. We need to reset the housing market. And it's going down a little bit with the Feds raising interest rates, but we need a recession, as stupid as that is. And I think that'll fix a lot of problems. But any interesting discussion on this one?
Yeah. So my initial response is, do you really think that a recession will turn around everyday grocery item products or other products, right? So I get that it could certainly do that with houses, but houses are like a different class of good. Sure. Right.
Yeah, we still have supply issues.
Exactly. So houses are complicated, but on the tri-tip, right? Let's say we do have a recession. Do you really think the price of tri-tip is going to come back down?
Yeah, eventually. It's not going to be an immediate thing.
It's that expensive, yeah.
It's crazy. That's insane. Or here's another example. This is not a supply issue. Just a couple, maybe 10 years ago, I used to eat at Burger King a lot because they'd often have the promotion, buy one Whopper for $1, get another for $1, right? Mm-hmm. I could grab 2 Whoppers and be on my way and get back to work, right? And not that they're particularly great, they're okay. And then a couple years ago, or just last year, it was buy 2 Whoppers for $6, right? I went there last week because I was in a hurry and there happened to be a Burger King. I paid $15 for 2 Whoppers and a drink.
Wow.
$15.
Yeah.
What the crap's going on? That's not a supply chain issue. This is inflation crap that we're dealing with, because that cheap meat, I don't know that's not beef. I don't know what that is. There's plenty of cats from Mexico that we're eating or whatever that beef is. I don't know, but that's not supply chain. You see what I'm saying there? A lot of this is inflation related.
You might have to become a 1 Whopper guy now.
But I can't even eat a full Whopper or I'd get fat. It's crazy. Anyway, yeah. I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
I agree with you, Ryan. I think I do think prices will come down if we're in recession, but for what do they call it? It's staples or whatever. It's the
staple goods.
Staple goods. It's
milk and bread, and
it's not going to come down that much, right? Because basically your demand is a pretty constant.
So I mean, I get what you're saying, Josh, that like a recession could reset some of the issues that we're dealing with inflation. So it's not like I disagree with you. I just don't know that it would actually have that effect, because inflation tends to go in one direction, right? So I mean, it's rare that countries actually experience deflation, the inverse of that, right? So inflation just tends to go in one direction, and as a result, I would be okay. Do you remember when we all first started driving, the price of gas?
Oh, it's like less than $1.
Yeah, it was like a buck, right? Yeah. I remember paying 90 cents for a gallon of gas.
Yeah.
We're never going back there, right? And I get that it's fluctuated a lot.
It's just unlikely.
The odds of it going back down to less than $1 for a gallon of gas are basically zero at this point, right? I won't say they're zero because you never know, but it's not going back, right? And so that, in my mind, that's why I'm saying, like, I get what you're saying, and it would be nice if suddenly prices actually came back down. They will on the more expensive items, TVs, right? So maybe TVs will come back down, or bigger items. But the items that Tom just mentioned, staple goods, the price of milk isn't really going to go back down to 50 cents a gallon, right? It's going to stay at the $3 to $6 that it is. Even with a recession, I don't think it's going to go down dramatically. Might go down a little bit, but I don't know. And that's a question. I don't know. I'm not an economist, or I don't pretend to be an economist on TV or anything. I really don't know the answer to that.
Well, Josh, is the bigger point you're saying is that hard times are going to help the country get on track? Is that the point you're making?
That's something worth talking about. I wasn't going to go quite that deep into it because I think that is actually the case. When people just are fat and happy with lots and lots of money, things don't go well. And inflate, like, the government pumped so much money into the economy. Everybody has money, and everybody's just being irresponsible and spending it on all sorts. Like, another example, and again, I actually agree with Ryan. I'm not an economist either, but things did my house. I bought my house in 2008 during the recession. It was a short sale. When I tell people that what I paid for my house, they crap a brick. The insurance company wouldn't insure it for what I paid it for. They said, a half-acre lot in that area? No, you're going to insure it for double what you paid for it. And if I sold my house right now, I could sell it for about 7 times what I paid for it. Wow. That's not an exaggeration.
That's awesome.
So things do go down, and you're both right. Some things won't go down because there's supply chain issues, and this is very complicated stuff. But a couple of years, 5 years ago, we made a sacrifice. So I was going to take off a lot of work that summer, and we bought season lagoon tickets, the local amusement park, for our kids, and we went all the time, and it was great. And then inflation started to creep up, and all of a sudden people have more money, and all of a sudden Lagoon was packed. So the next couple of years we went like once or twice. I went, screw this. Right. Everybody had enough money to just go do that kind of stuff. So it's no longer you're making a sacrifice to do that kind of stuff. Everybody has money. So when times are tougher, people are going to be more responsible. And yeah, I think the price of a lot of this, I don't know. I thought it was worth talking about.
Mm-hmm. Ryan, do you agree?
I agree that it's definitely worth talking about. I don't know that any of us can forecast the future, right? I agree with the principle. Yeah, I agree with the principle. So it's not like I disagree. I just don't know the answer to that, right? It would be nice if that happened, but I don't know.
I mean, I to the overall point, I think that's a big reason why people don't think we're going in the right direction.
It is because of inflation.
So dang expensive. Like trucks. When I bought my truck, I paid like $26,000, which was a lot of money. Yeah. Now a truck's like $90,000.
Yeah.
For a very similar truck. Holy crap.
And again,
that's insane.
Do you think 5 years down the road, when the supply chain issues are all worked out for vehicles, that it's going to come back down?
If nobody can afford trucks because nobody has any money, yeah, I do. Because the market will shift to meet the demand.
You're both right in that, like, prices come down, right? They ebb and they flow. Yeah. And like, especially in 2008, right? They came way down but they ebb and they flow. And so a recession would bring prices down, but historically prices always inflate, right? And we inflate and so that everything gets more expensive. And in relative to what you're making, it's not always more expensive, but at least the price at least goes up. But
that's usually been the case.
That's why pennies are worthless, right? There's that show, A Million Ways to Die in the West, right? And they're like, I'll bet you $1. And they're all like, $1? I've never seen $1. Anyway. Okay.
Well,
Josh.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you want your question? No? You got more to add?
I saw one of the late night talk show hosts was interviewing this 100-year-old lady, asking her, it was Jay Leno. So it was a couple of years ago. He's asking her about her first car she bought.
Yeah.
And she said it was like a really nice Ford for the time. She paid $400 for it for a car.
Yeah.
Crap.
So in the early 1970s, one of my professors in college, his starting salary, which was a very good starting salary at an R1, so this is a top level university, was $7,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
$7,000 a year, and that was a good salary for a college professor.
Yes,
I was like,
but a house costs $30,000.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
It was like a $24,000 house, and I was like, okay.
Totally.
I mean, I get that, but like, we're never going back to those numbers, right?
Well,
Right.
The general
look
direction
at
is
look at the problem now. Houses are so expensive. Or I have some rentals down in Riverdale, 2-bedroom apartments. What I'm charging now, and I'm actually about $400 below market value because I didn't feel like it was right to charge people what market value is on those.
Right.
Every comparable that I found was $1,300 to $1,400 a month, which is way more than my mortgage.
Dude, that's cheap for Tampa.
And that's cheap for
Anywhere.
or I mean, it's cheap for anywhere, right? How can people afford that?
I don't know.
College kids can't afford that. So we need to have some sort of reset. There's got to be a reset because houses don't cost $30,000 anymore. The houses around me cost $1 million now. It's insane.
It's crazy. Well, cool. Well, I mean, yeah, it's the sign of the time. We're living in some fun times. Okay, Josh, can we agree that the reduction in poverty rates and no one in the U.S. experiencing hunger would be a good direction for the country?
I'm going pretty short on my points today. So currently about 11.6% of Americans fall below the federal poverty line, which is about 38 million people. For one person, just so we know what the federal poverty line is, that's making $13,590 a year. Okay. If we go to a family of 4, that would be $27,750. Going off of the rent that you just described, Josh, right? If you were making $13,590, could you afford one of your apartments?
That would be literally your whole salary.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
So the federal poverty line is not unrealistic. I mean, it's actually a pretty good gauge. So there are 11.6% of Americans living below the federal poverty line, which is disturbing, right? And then I actually looked up roughly 11 million kids experience hunger on a regular basis in the US. So just basic statistics, right? And that's why I asked the question, can we agree that a reduction in poverty rates and no one in the US experiencing hunger would be a good direction for the country?
I hate kids and poor people. Screw them.
This is me throwing my own softball at you, right? Like I can't throw a softer softball than that one.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, that's pretty lame.
Well, I'm waiting for Josh to be like, no, actually,
I did.
Not.
I hate kids.
Totally.
I thought that was easy, right? I mean,
it's very easy.
Can we head in that direction?
Nobody wants poor people.
I think Josh doesn't want people to be poor and kids do not starve. Good.
I mean, it's silly. Politically speaking, a lot of times this is used as a straw man argument.
I know,
Yes,
and that's why I was like, I'm actually
really
trying to establish common ground here, right? That's the whole point, is we both agree on this.
Everybody
right?
agrees
on that. That's one of those stupid straw man
It's
arguments that get
hey,
thrown
will
out
you
there.
donate to this cause? And they're like, no. You're like, do you hate kids? And you're like, yeah, I hate kids.
No.
I do know some people who hate kids, but
Well,
anyway.
Yesterday I hated my kids. So
Yeah.
really funny story attached to that one. Anyway.
Well, now you have to tell it if you're going to just drop something like that.
Okay, so I'm at Addie's softball game, and her team, it's amazing watching girls play because they feed off each other. If one of them makes a bad play, the team just cascades into failure, and they just sucked yesterday. So I'm like annoyed because I'm sitting there for an hour watching this game, and I made my son Gunner come to the game. He didn't want to go. He wanted to stay home and play video games. So I pull out my phone because I'm not watching this game, and Gunner he's like mad, and my wife's like, "What's wrong?" And he says, "I'm bored." I said, "Yep, I'm bored too." And he just points at my phone. He's like, "I don't have a phone." It's like, oh, well, good point, but you're a kid. You should use your imagination. Go have fun. So he runs off and he's playing with the other kids. The game ends and we walk over there and my youngest, she's taking her shoes off, and my two boys are throwing. They're standing like 30 feet away from a garbage can, and they're throwing her shoes in the garbage can for fun. And it's full of nasty garbage.
They are being creative.
And I get mad. I'm like, what the crap are you guys thinking? And Gunnar looks at me and goes, imagination.
He's exactly right. How can you get mad at that?
I started laughing like, it's a good thing you just made me laugh, boy, because your life is about to end.
It's funny now getting that garbage can.
That's great.
I hated my kids last night, even though he made me laugh really hard. But I hate kids.
Totally.
Oh, I love that story about Gunnar. That's awesome. Imagination. He's not wrong.
He was, that's exactly what I told him to do. Anyway, sorry. Continuing
Ryan, next question.
Yes.
Would you agree that a lack of trust in our institutions is a large part of why people feel the country is headed in the wrong direction? Give us some more context here, Josh.
So I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. I think the one currency that governments have to trade in is trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they have. And so many. I just saw an article where we all know that Nancy Pelosi has been doing this insider trading. There's a bunch of people that just follow her stock picks and they just do the same thing and they become millionaires. And I just saw in passing. I don't know the details of this, but Congress proposed some legislation to maybe stop this governmental insider trading. And who shut it down? Nancy Pelosi.
Guessing Nancy Pelosi, but
she's like 90 years old. Why does she need all this money, right? It's just power. They're just so addicted to power. Nobody trusts our government. It's not just Nancy Pelosi. It's all of them, right? I was reading I was watching this YouTube video. This guy was breaking down the Ukraine situation with the war, and he was walking through how Joe Biden was the Ukrainian frontman when he was the vice president, making all these deals with Ukraine. And, Vladimir Putin asked, I don't want NATO on my doorstep. And the guy in the video made a good point. How would we feel if Montreal seceded from Canada, became part of Russia, and Vladimir Putin started stockpiling missiles there, right? We'd be pissed, right? Well, that's what we did to Russia. That's what Biden and Obama did to Russia. And Biden's the point man dealing with Ukraine. And all of a sudden his son gets this sweetheart deal with Burisma. He walked through the whole thing. It's just obvious that these guys are corrupt. And I've been saying that for a while. Ryan doesn't like to hear it, but all of these governments are corrupt and authoritarian. You got Trudeau up in Canada, and he's being authoritarian with the truckers. You got the authoritarian COVID stuff in Australia. Nobody trusts the government. And I don't trust the Democrats as far as I could throw them, but I've said it several times. I don't really like the Republicans either. Nobody trusts the government. It's all a big power play. They're all just as corrupt as the day is long. Everybody knows what Nancy Pelosi's doing. Everybody does. How come nothing's changing? Nobody knows what to do about it. And we pick up guns and march on them. What do we do about it? Because the Democrats just keep voting her in, right? Because she has a lot of sway. What are we going to do about it? And nobody trusts these people. Nobody trusts Biden. I joked about the nuclear war earlier. We literally might be having a nuclear war with Russia, and this is largely Obama and Biden's fault because
everyone's okay with this.
You can't say this is Obama and Biden's fault. This is Putin's
I just
fault.
did.
It's Putin's fault.
That's what Biden keeps saying.
Come on.
He didn't want. What would we do if he started stockpiling missiles in Cuba and Montreal? What would we do? We would frickin' attack, right? We wouldn't want that.
We didn't put nuclear missiles in Ukraine.
Oh, we put all sorts of missiles in the country right above them.
Right above them is Belarus, which is a partner with Russia.
Lithuania and
Lithuania or somewhere, right? And so
they're
Lithuania and Estonia are NATO, but I don't think we put nuclear missiles there.
We didn't put nuclear weapons. We put all sorts of weapons and tanks and missiles.
We might have trained them, sure, okay, but
would we be happy if he put any kind of missiles in Cuba or Montreal? No, we would attack, right? So, I'm not saying Putin's not at fault. He's a douchebag, but these guys were just clueless. They're just making deals with Ukraine. They're putting in their own governments. The FBI's and CIA's knee deep in Ukraine. I don't trust these guys. I don't trust that they have my best interests at heart. They're just padding their wallets.
I think it's pretty fair to say. I mean, I think I'm pretty confident if we looked at any stat that trust in government, federal government especially, was probably at an all-time low.
Mm-hmm.
It's really low. I can look.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's a similar to our survey that it's been going down for years. By the way, I looked up the survey. It's 74% say that the country is going in the wrong direction. But with the survey taken last August. What, Ryan, do you think that, do you, so trust in government is low. Do you attribute that to why people are, I get, if I could summarize it, Josh, you'd say that's just like kind of, we're getting not rampant corruption, but we're getting corruption. I mean, I would say
rampant.
US is
Let's
one
say
of,
rampant.
I'd like to think the US is one of the, on the scale of corruption, right? The US is on the lower scale compared to some tyrannical regime in Kazakhstan or Africa or something. But
I don't know.
But it's getting more corrupt. I would agree with that sentiment. Ryan, what do you think?
On that specific point about the government being more corrupt? Yeah, I listened to a podcast on Linux because I'm a geek like that, right? And one of the guys opened the podcast, I think it was that Linux one, by saying something to the effect of, it's not like we're like the US where they've legalized bribery and they just call it campaign donations, right? And it was like a joke because they're all British, right? So all the guys on the podcast are British, and all of them busted out laughing because it's an open secret, right? In the US,
everybody knows
that basically campaign donations are bribes, right? Like you could start a PAC and you can donate $1 million to this PAC, and effectively that's a bribe to get politicians to do what you want. So when Josh says they're all corrupt, I'm not going to fight that for a second. We meaning the Supreme Court, right? When it basically said you could do this, we opened the floodgates to basically being able to bribe all of our politicians. That's basically how our system works. So, good luck finding an honest politician who I think is actually in it for the right reason. I don't know of many. I think some of my local politicians are because they don't make very much money.
So, all right, then on the bigger point, that
trust in government.
Trust in government is you could attribute that to this sentiment.
Yeah, so I actually just pulled up data on trust in government by Pew. I know some of the people who work for Pew. This is not their area; they do the religion stuff. But back in the 1960s, the percentage of the population that said they trusted the government. So under Eisenhower, it was above 70%. Kennedy, it was above 70. Under Johnson, it started to fall, but it was still above 70 and then dropped to the 60s. Nixon, it dropped by by 40%, 30%.
Can't imagine why.
Yeah. Ford, he was short-lived, so it stayed right in the 30s. Carter, it dropped a little bit down to the upper 20s. Reagan, it actually went up. So that's there are only two that it goes up on, right? Reagan, it goes up by about 10%. Under Bush Sr., it drops by about 20%. Under Clinton, it goes up. So under Clinton, it actually went up. At the end of his presidency, it was at 40% again. Under second Bush, it just holds steady on Obama. Under the second Bush, it drops all the way back down to the 20s, and it's hovered in the 20s since then. So there's a low during Trump and Obama of like 17%, but it's basically just hovering right around 20%, and it's holding at 20% under Biden. So I don't know that it's getting worse, right? Over the last 20 years, I don't think it's gotten much worse than it was, maybe a little bit, right? George W. Bush got a really good spike because of September 11th, 2001, right?
I would think
so. So that spiked it up, and then it just basically dropped back down to, 20%, and it's holding. So on your bigger point of do I think lack of trust in the government?
He took all that goodwill and went to war in Iraq, and just blew it on Iraq. Like everyone's all feeling patriotic. Are you feeling patriotic? All right, we'll go get yourself killed in Iraq.
There's weapons of mass destruction over there.
Jeez.
No,
See
this?
This is yellow cake uranium. Yellow cake uranium.
The same people that made those decisions are the ones that are still making these decisions. It's crazy. Nothing changes.
So yeah, I would agree that a lack of trust in government, and it's general, right? So this is not a lack of trust in Republicans, a lack of trust in Democrats. There are differences in, which group is more trusting, but overall, I mean, that's pretty pathetic when 20% of our population trusts the government, which means 80% are like, yeah, nope, don't trust them.
I mean, it's in the open now. It's in the open what they're doing.
And who polices them, right? This is the best part. So they police themselves.
Yeah.
They would have to write a law saying we will no longer take campaign donations.
They just tried, and Nancy Pelosi killed it.
Right. It's the same of like term limits, right? It's like the only people that can they did it on the president, right? They're like, that guy, we got to get that term limits on the president. We got to go on ourselves.
No, let's give ourselves a raise.
Yeah.
No, 10 years ago, Charlie Rangel, the Democrat that was in charge of the tax committee, committed tax fraud, right? He cheated on his taxes. And if I did that, I'm going to jail. What did he have to do? He went in front of Congress and said, "Oh, I'm sorry." He shed a tear. He's good. Nothing happens. Right. Yeah, because who watches The Watchmen? It's sad. Let me take it in a slightly different direction because I think this is interesting. I said institutions in my question, so I meant largely government. But a lot of these, we've talked a lot about big media and big tech, right, and censorship and stuff. I think most people on the right don't trust any of these institutions. This is why Elon Musk is buying Twitter, right? And I just saw that the deal might be back on. And one of the CEOs at Twitter just admitted to the censorship without realizing what he did. He said, if this sale goes through, it'll probably cost us the election in 2024, which vis-a-vis what he's actually saying is, we're censoring things to benefit us, because if he takes over, then we lose the election. He admitted it without realizing what he was admitting. And Ryan's been denying it, that there's all of this censorship going on, or you keep saying, they can do it. Yeah,
they are private corporations.
They can do it. That doesn't mean
the government.
They should do it, and they're all doing it.
I didn't say that.
So nobody trusts Facebook, and this just came out. Google is just being, what's the word? Throttling GOP emails. People with Gmail that are sending out GOP fundraising and stuff like that. They just found out all of their emails are being throttled all of a sudden by Google. That's not happening to any Democrats, just Republicans. So now evil corporation Google is screwing with Gmail.
I'd like to see more information on that.
Pretty incredible.
We don't know, right? We don't know. Yeah. But to your point, you're saying that trust in corporations is probably it could be thrown in there.
That should be the purview of the left, worrying about this evil capitalists, but it's the right that's doing this. Everything's on its head now.
I don't know about that, but trust in all institutions and organizations is down, and it's been declining since the 1970s. There are a couple that are doing okay, but trust in religions is down, trust in banks is down, trust in almost everything. Trust in science leveled out at a higher level than most other areas. So that one's actually holding okay. It's not great, right? But almost everything has just plummeted. Trust in corporations, trust in courts, trust in everything it's dropped.
All right. I'm going to move on to the next question here then. So Josh, can we agree that the lower levels of pollution and a shift away from fossil fuels to cleaner, renewable energy sources would be a good direction for the country?
Here's my softball. Here's my softball, Josh. Come on.
Lower
there it is. I'm throwing underhand. This is underhand.
A shift away from fossil fuels.
You can elaborate, or can I just tell you?
No, that was literally it. I'm trying to lob you 2 softballs so I can hit you with something harder in the last one.
Come on,
because we've already said.
I want a little more explanation. Why?
No,
I think it's pretty straightforward. Do you want more pollution, and do you want us to burn more fossil fuels?
Yes, because we're probably what's going to pollute the planet more? A few more years of fossil fuels or a nuclear war? Because why does Putin have so much power right now? Because Europe and the United States went, we're afraid of fossil fuels. We're all going to die in 12 years, right? So now he has all of this power and all of this money because the entire civilized world went, no nuclear, no fossil fuels. Let's go green, and we can't sustain it yet. The technology's not there yet. So we if the U.S. when this war in Ukraine and stuff, well, I mean a little before that, if we would have started or we would have kept producing more oil here. When Biden got in, he killed all the Keystone pipeline and all the pipelines. He got rid of a bunch of drilling leases, and it's a little more complicated than that, but not really. The U.S. was, I think, energy self-sufficient 4 years ago or something like that, and now we dialed it back, got rid of the drilling leases. If we had excess oil right now, we could be just bailing out Europe, right? We could be sending it to
have excess gas. We are sending the excess gas
to China
and the gas reserves.
Not to I mean natural gas, not the other kind of gas. Okay. Natural gas we are exporting. We are a net exporter of natural gas.
If we had drilled more and we were prepared for this.
Hey, but that's not the question. I'm not talking like in the immediate, like in the next 5 years. I'm saying
it actually is the question.
In the grand scheme of things.
Sure.
Do you want more pollution or less pollution?
Sure.
In the grand scheme of things, do we want less fossil fuels or more fossil fuels?
Okay, but that actually
that's all I asked. I mean, I'm lobbing a softball at you, Josh. Yeah. Come on.
And I'm going to hit it over the fence because you're asking. You're hiding behind the question.
I'm not even hiding. No, this is literally like there's no subterfuge, ulterior motive at this at all. I was just like, can we find common ground that none of us want more pollution and we want to eventually switch away from fossil fuels?
I've said that repeatedly.
I know, and it's just reaffirming. Done. That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
If we were energy self-sufficient right now, and we had some excess to help out our allies, we might not even have a war in Ukraine right now. That's a logical conclusion to draw. We might end up in a nuclear war because of global warming. You can actually make that argument, and it actually tracks. Sorry, it does.
Energy independence and supporting green and energy initiatives, I think, can be kind of separated out, right?
They're not mutually exclusive at all.
I mean, but I think you could separate it because I think Ryan would agree that energy independence is important, right?
I mean, certainly right now it's illustrating the benefits of that. So
yeah. But then also,
I listened to a really good podcast about Germany and Russia and what Germany did like 20 something years ago, actually about 20 years ago. They had this idea that if they built closer relationships with Russia, particularly economic relationships, trade relationships, then Russia would be less likely to become an aggressor. Right. And
I read something
wrong,
like that too.
Right. So
it turns out if we can bring you into Europe and into the EU, then you'd be less of a dick.
Yeah. And like I get the logic, right? It's not like the logic is unsound. It makes sense at a very basic level that it's like, hey, if we're getting along and trading and like we become dependent on each other, then maybe you won't be a dick, like Tom said.
And there would be consequences for breaking these, being an aggressor.
Because Germany and Russia have such a good track record along with everybody.
Come on, but you understand the logic. It turns out they were wrong.
If you look at since World War II, right? And then the Cold War, the downfall of the USSR, right? Russia's slowly becoming less and less of this threatening force in Europe. And
they were until Putin took back.
No, I totally. I think, and I really think it took everyone by surprise.
I think
a lot of people didn't think he was going to go through with it. So, for the very point that Ryan's bringing, that there were a lot of economic consequences for doing it.
Yeah. So my general point there is, I get the argument behind economic independence, right? I'm not disagreeing with that. I didn't think, come to find out I was in the same camp as Germany, but I didn't think that
international global interdependence was really going to be a bad thing, right? Then, of course, we have a pandemic, and turns out we're not making any of the stuff we need for a pandemic, right? Like, oh crap, right? We screwed that one up, right? And that was kind of a useful little lesson of like, okay, yeah, sure, I get that manufacturing stuff is way cheaper in China and India, but maybe we should be doing at least a little bit of manufacturing here in the US, right? So the pandemic was a bit of an eye opener, and then we get Russia pulling this crap, right? And it's like, oh, yep. I see the argument behind economic independence here. Like, I get it.
I played a video on the podcast of Trump predicting this stuff going down with Russia before the pandemic. So I agree with everything you just said. It really is an eye opener, right? The pandemic was. But a lot of people saw this writing on the wall because we know Putin's a piece of crap. He was annexing Crimea in 2016 or whatever.
2014.
Yeah. So there is a video of Trump like berating the Germans at a NATO meeting, being like, why would you do Nord Stream 2? He's like, the Russians, why would you deal with the Russians? Right? And they're just like, well, it'll work out. It'll be great.
We Germans are not warlike people. Neither are the Russians. Just don't ask Poland about that.
So you don't agree? You do agree, Josh?
I agree with his.
It was such a softball.
Happy land overall point that nobody is a villain from Captain Planet that just likes to pollute the rainforest. Agreed.
So if we were headed in that, the point behind these first two, just to clarify, the point behind these first two is if we were headed in this direction, lower poverty rates and less pollution, would that improve people's vision of are we headed in the right direction?
If that's your overall question, I don't think that's what people are up in arms about.
And,
I really don't.
That's a genuine question, right? Like I'm genuinely wondering, is it that easy? Or I mean, not that those are easy, right? Those are both very challenging things, but is that part of what's driving people's conception down?
I don't think so. I don't think people are dealing with that. There's exception to the rule, but I don't think most people are dealing with those problems on a day-to-day basis. We're not living in Shanghai where there's smog, right? Occasionally we'll get some inversion here in Salt Lake, but that's on the other side of the mountains. That's why I moved to Mountain Green. We don't have the smog up here, right? Most people aren't dealing with pollution day-to-day in the United States. Most people aren't dealing with poverty day-to-day in the United States. And we're talking about the average take, right? Yeah, these are problems. At an
excessive level.
Yeah, they're worth addressing, but I don't think this is what's getting people down. I really don't.
You don't think that's what's putting into the survey when they're like, this is all wrong? They're thinking of other things.
Well, people are short-sighted and selfish, essentially. I'm not thinking about those poor kids in Ogden because I don't know them. And I'm not, if they're in front of me, now I'm thinking about them. Now I'm going to do something about it. But day to day, I'm just going about my business. I'm not thinking about those things. And I'm not...
Tragedy of the well.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Okay, I'm moving on. This is your third questions are interesting in their similarities, but we'll go to Josh's question for Ryan. Ryan, would you agree that wokeness has resulted in a crisis of purpose?
Wokeness is responsible for everything. All bad comes from wokeness. I think this is the platform of the conservatives in the US. If you're woke, you are causing all the problems.
It's going to get them big gains in the elections, right? That platform, right, of wokeness.
Okay, I want to have an actual conversation here. It's going to come across more of an attack, but let's watch this video, and then I want to talk about what's going on.
Jordan Peterson. Blah, blah, blah.
He doesn't even know why he hates
him. He seems very open-minded.
Yep. Yeah, he has from day one. He can't say any reasons why he doesn't agree with him. But
yeah, I can. You guys just don't want to have those conversations because we get into the weeds. All right. Is it the whole thing? Because this is 7 minutes long.
It's only about 3 minutes.
At the beginning?
Yep.
Okay.
I don't want to, but I have to. I want to ask you just quickly, the film director Olivia Wilde has a new movie out, which she says is based on you, this insane man, this pseudo-intellectual hero to the incel community. Incel being these weirdo loner men who are despicable in many ways. Is that you? Are you the intellectual hero to these people?
Sure. Why not? People have been after me for a long time by because I've been speaking to disaffected young men. You know, what a terrible thing to do that is. I thought the marginalized were supposed to have a voice.
It's making you emotional. Talk about that.
Well, God, you know, it's very difficult to understand how demoralized people are. And certainly many young men are in that category. And you get these casual insults, these incels. What does it mean? It's like, well, these men, they don't know how to make themselves attractive to women who are very picky, and good for them. Women, like, be picky. That's your gift, man. Demand high standards from your men. Fair enough. But all these men who are alienated, it's like they're lonesome and they don't know what to do, and everyone piles abuse on them.
When she said that, Olivia Wilde, it stung you, didn't it? I saw the
reaction. By
reaction.
that time, you know, that as far as critiques go, that was kind of low level. I mean, once I got painted as Red Skull, you know, magical super Nazi, that was kind of the end of the insults. There's no place past that. So when Olivia Wilde made those comments, the first thing I did was go look at the preview for a movie, which I quite liked. I thought I would go see that movie probably, and perhaps I will. It didn't really bother me. My family and I talked about it right away, and we were able to respond to it with some degree of humor, which then people completely misunderstood. I said I hope that, you know, that if I had to be played by someone, I think it's Chris Wilde, is that? Chris Pine. He's a very good-looking man, and so that seems all right, you know. And then I said something like, I hope he gets my fashion style choice right when he plays me. And it was a joke. All that was a joke.
I mean, you've been so controlled today, and yet in that brief moment, you got very emotional. Why?
It's really something to see constantly how many people are dying for lack of an encouraging word. And how easy it is to provide that if you're careful. You know, give credit where credit is due. And to say, you're a net force for good if you want to be.
Do you believe you're a net force for good?
Net, yes. In all the details, probably not. You know, no one's perfect. So people make their mistakes as they stumble uphill.
Okay, we can stop it there.
Jordan's been a fascinating.
Okay.
So there's a lot there, but you know, I want to just discuss a couple things there that he says. So one, he mentions, are you the representative of the incels? And he says, why not? You know, I thought everybody deserves a voice. So he's giving. I've criticized the left a couple of times here. When Jordan points out the proper place of the left is to stand for the disenfranchised, right? And he's giving proof to a lie right there that the left stands for the disenfranchised as long as it's useful, as long as there's some power to be had, because the left is not standing for incels, for disenfranchised young men. And that's Jordan didn't start out talking to young men. He just started posting his videos on YouTube, and that's what gravitated towards him, is hundreds of thousands of young men who were disenfranchised largely by the left. A lot of these guys were on the left. And so I saw Ben Shapiro did a piece on this. He played this video and he talked about his take on this is the sexual revolution, where we got rid of, you know, we don't need to get married and these family value stuff, and it's, you know, go sleep around and it's all fine, it's okay. Of course you're going to have a whole bunch of young men who are no longer going to be able to find women because people aren't looking to get married. And
sorry, that's a total non sequitur. I don't follow that logic at all. Well, then explain it, because it seems completely incoherent, that connection.
Well, let me see if I can remember how Ben explained that. I really liked his take on it. When
if you're not in a committed relationship, that the woman can go for the next guy up or something, or
so he explains it like this. Really, this keeps going in and out of my head. When you have this third wave feminist movement, he kind of he put this all together, saying that women don't need men, and men are sexist, and they're all rapists, and get rid of the patriarchy, and masculinity is toxic, and that becomes this everyday phrase of toxic masculinity, which Ryan doesn't like that, but that really is what they're saying. If you're masculine, you're toxic. So you have all these young men that went, oh, I guess I can't be masculine, so I'll be androgynous and more feminine. It turns out women don't actually like men like that. Women actually like masculine men. So you have all these men that don't know how to attract a woman. That's why they're incels now. And you can argue that, but that's why they exist. They don't know what to do to attract women because they're listening to this going, well, I can't be masculine. So they're not happy. And then on the other hand, you have all these feminists that are told you don't have children, go get a job. That's what women should be doing. And then they're not happy either because they don't have any men to be attracted to because they turned them all into these castrated males. And I told you Ryan was going to crap on Rick about this, but
there's just so much that I don't agree with on this.
What is the crisis of purpose?
So that's where, I mean, you're a fan of Jordan. All these guys are attracted to him because he gives them meaning. He gives them something to work for, gives them purpose, because these young men have no purpose. If you're told your whole life, you can't be masculine, and here's another example that I thought of earlier today with the whole transgender thing, and the left is pushing this legislation. If a kid goes to school and says, yeah, I'm a boy, but now I want to identify as a girl, they're pushing legislation where you can't even call the parents to tell them about this. They're pushing these this transgender stuff, and I've been reading these articles lately, just this last month, of all these people that are coming out saying, I totally regret that I had a sex change. Like, there's no take backs. I cut my penis off because when I was a teenager I thought I was a girl. Now and everybody said, yeah, you should do that, and the doctors were down with it, and the schools were down with it, and their parents were down with it, and now they're stuck with whatever they are. Right? They can't go back on that. And my big takeaway here is when you're telling a kid that their purpose should be changing their body, and that's their purpose, what the hell kind of purpose is that?
That's nobody's platform. That's nobody's platform. This is such a characterization that's just utterly absurd. It's not like a core part of the Democratic platform is everybody needs to change their fucking gender, right? Like, seriously, Josh? That is so utterly absurd that you think that's part of the platform of Democrats.
Then explain why we have an epidemic of depression and drug abuse. And if you look at the numbers, people are way less happy than they used to be. It's been going down, but they're way worse off. So I think it's a lack of purpose. And I knew you would hate that, but
no, because the numbers don't agree with you. People aren't any less happy now than they were 20 years ago.
Of course they are. I actually had
anxiety is up. Anxiety's up.
I had the
depression medications are up a little bit, but not that much.
Because I knew you would just pull out other numbers, because you can find numbers to prove whatever side of this you want. You can find numbers to prove anything you want. But it's just common sense.
So we're just not going to agree on facts or reality, is what you're saying.
I would say there are a lot of stats that, like, loneliness is the highest, anxiety, depression. Those are all, there's a bunch of others, addiction. Addiction's
not up that much. I mean, we should just look at numbers, but the others are. So loneliness is up. Depression, I mean, it kind of plateaued. But I don't think like happiness measures have actually gone down.
Yeah, they have. Drug use is up.
So what and you, so let me just I'm trying to tie this together. And you would say wokeness has contributed to sort of this dissolution of like a man would grow up and be like, oh, I'm going to become a husband and we're going to have kids and I'm going to take care of my wife. And that sort of paradigm has been flipped around, and women are like, oh, I'm going to be a mom and I'm going to raise kids and my husband's going to take care of me. And all that's been turned up on its head. And therefore we've lost meaning, or like that sort of purpose and meaning. And therefore we've become like unhappy and feel like things are going in the wrong direction. Is that?
Yeah.
I think that's what he's saying. I don't buy any of it.
Of course not. You're a liberal. If you bought any of that, you would be a conservative. I mean, that's just
no. I mean, that's
a fact.
It's a total non sequitur, Josh.
No,
right? So no. You can't just assert no, it's not. Right? Well, let's unpack it if we're going to unpack it. No, so do you want to unpack it, or do you just want to say, I'm going to say my point, and Ryan doesn't get to say anything, and then we're done?
Already?
Well, I'm not triggered. You're literally stating things that are factually not accurate.
Ryan, okay. Do you agree that?
Never mind. Then we'll just.
Do you agree that there's a crisis of purpose? Like that there's a crisis of purpose. Do you agree with that?
I don't know that there's a crisis of purpose. I think some people are feeling like they have no purpose.
Right.
Right, but it's not like the entire planet suddenly is. We have no purpose. We must all kill ourselves. I think it's a small percentage.
Do you think that's it's the largest percentage it's ever been, or do you think it's not? It's nominal. Or that it's not any bigger than it's ever been before. All right.
So,
I'm not associating it with wokeness. I'm just saying, is there?
Okay, so let's focus on the first one.
Yeah.
2 answers. It's very possible that people having a sense of purpose has declined over time. Okay. That said, this is actually one of the areas where I do research, right? I've published in this. Tomorrow, I'm actually giving a talk on the relationship between religion and happiness, because I have published on this topic, right? I haven't published as much on purpose, but here's the fascinating thing about purpose. The correlation between having a sense of purpose, or like how strong your sense of purpose is, and how healthy you are mentally or physically, is basically zero.
Really? Okay.
So having a sense of purpose does nothing for your mental or physical health. So if we want to talk about it in other ways, that's perfectly fine. But in that very specific context, right? So this is why when I say like, okay, maybe there is a sense of people like not having as much purpose in life. So but what?
You wouldn't attribute it to people feeling like the country's
nope. No, I mean, maybe it combines with other attitudes, but this is not going to increase people like being unhealthy and dying, right? Like people are not dying from a lack of purpose. Like
right.
The evidence does not support that. And that's the empirical evidence from mountains of data that gets published in public health journals, because that's what I read.
Okay. So these the suicides, what do they call it? The dregs of despair, right? With these male
people
white
suicide, and that's gone up a little bit.
Drug abuse, that crisis that's kind of going on, that doesn't have to do with purpose. That's just other.
I mean, sure, people kill themselves when they don't feel like they have a good sense of purpose. That's true, but that's been true for over 100 years.
Yeah.
Emil Durkheim, a sociologist, very famous, like founder of the discipline, he wrote a book called Suicide, and he said one of the reasons why people commit suicide is they lack a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
Like he said that 150 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it sounds like it's true, but then is it growing? I guess that would be to
suicide rates have ticked up a little bit in the US. So they're up. Yep, they're up.
Okay.
But can we definitively say that the reason why they're up is because some people, maybe more people, lack a sense of purpose? I don't think we can, right? And this is why I know Josh's other point is, I think, the bigger non sequitur, but when you get people saying, oh, people lack a sense of purpose and suicide rates have gone up, okay, that's an empirical and statistical question, right? And a logic question. You have to be able to establish
correlation, but not necessarily
correlation is not causation, right? One has to come before the other one. You have to rule out spurious effects, right? And you have to be able to show that they are in fact changing at the same time. It's a complicated process.
So
I don't think anybody's established that.
And you don't believe it, that there's a crisis of purpose in the country.
Show me the data, right? Okay. If you can show me data, I will absolutely be convinced. I changed my mind on something just yesterday because people brought me data and I was like, okay, you're right. Show me the data. So if you can make that really compelling argument, and this is why I'm just saying, I would say at this point, it's a non sequitur to say those two, right? So it does not follow. That's all non sequitur means. It does not follow. Only because no one has actually showed me compelling data saying, if this happens, then this happens.
Yeah.
If you can bring that to bear, I'll be convinced. I like data. I'm convinced by data. I'm open-minded to data, but just asserting it means nothing to me, right? You can assert
data?
any number of things.
Because I had all the numbers.
No
and I deleted
agreement.
them
Because
because I knew that's what would happen. I knew
show me in a
exactly
peer-reviewed journal.
Yeah. So as long as the people that I agree with,
the experts,
the
because
self-proclaimed experts, because that's
okay. So just dismiss all of science, Josh. Go ahead and do that, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're saying, your numbers.
Doing non sequiturs now.
I'm not doing non sequiturs. You are. You're dismissing all of the ways that we enhance the world.
You very well know my stance on peer review, how I'm leery of it. And what did you just say? Okay, you just dismissed
peer
all
review
science.
for science. You just
did. Just dismissed. Really?
That's what you said.
I'm leery of peer review, especially in your discipline, because you're all like-minded and you hand each other degrees. We've been over this. Anyway, let's go to your question.
What our next topic is.
I had
okay, because
I mean, we're talking about peer reviewing.
That'd be great. We didn't even get to the whole divorce laws and working women and all of the other things that Josh said that it does not follow. So if we want to get to what Jordan Peterson said, I actually was like, okay, I can get behind what Jordan Peterson is saying in this episode, right? I don't think Jordan Peterson, when he started talking, was like, I am going to be the hero of incels. I think that's true, right? I think what Josh said is, that these are the people who gravitated to him. Yeah. And now he's become something of a champion for them. And I when he's crying, I don't think those are crocodile tears. I think he's legit, that he's like, there is a problem out there. There are a group of people who are struggling, and they found some inspiration and hope in what I'm writing. Okay. But why would I criticize that, right? I'm not criticizing that. Okay. I'm perfectly fine with what Jordan Peterson said there. A lot of what Josh said afterwards, I was like, no, that's completely incoherent. Makes no sense, right? But what Jordan Peterson said in that episode, fine. Are there some problems with incels? Yes. Okay. But I'm not going to try and crap on incels. I think we can try and address the bigger issue of they're involuntarily celibate. That's what it means. They want to be having sex and they can't. Okay. Is the solution to that to get rid of divorce laws and to make women not be able to work so then they have to marry these guys?
Because
that's what you said, Josh.
That's not what
basically
I said at all.
Feminism and women working is part of the reason why these guys can't find partners. And I'm like, what in the world are you saying? That is so absurd.
Is that the conclusion that I actually drew? I never said anything about divorce laws. I never said any of that.
You said women working, and then you connected that to incels. You literally said this, and this is why I'm like non sequitur.
Feminism with toxic masculinity. Maybe I need to try to explain this better. Okay, when you have the half of the country telling men, I saw this news reporter the other day saying, yeah, both of my sons, they're just little, but they're racist, or not racist, they're rapists. Okay, because all men are inherently rapists. Okay, this is the kind of stuff that the weird people on the left are throwing out there, and if you are on the left, if you're Democrat, you're listening to this. You're taking this in.
No, we're not listening to this.
You weren't raised.
You listen to the radical right. I don't. I read the BBC.
You weren't raised on the left. You were raised conservative. Okay, so clearly men are hearing something. And
I don't think the vast majority of men are hearing. Want us to go down you're a rapist.
No. Okay. We're going to move on to the next question.
Great topic for another podcast. Let's bring it back up some other time, but I am not buying anything that you said.
It would be interesting.
I know you wouldn't.
Okay, Josh, you ready for the final question?
I'm just going to say no right now.
Can we agree that moving away from thinking that our perspective is absolutely and exclusively correct and everyone else is wrong is a problem, and moving away from that perspective would be a good direction for the country?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Well, that was easy.
Oh my gosh. So he fought me on my first 2 softballs. And then on the one where I'm like,
Not the
there's
first
no
one.
way he's going to agree with me.
Okay,
He actually
say
agrees
that
with me.
again. Maybe I didn't understand that correctly.
You're like, hang on.
Can we
No.
agree that
Ryan, why
having
don't
a
you
perspective? So
add to it?
I don't actually have a preamble for this, right? My preamble is just because I thought I'd get agreement on the first 2, I'm going to poke Josh on this third one. That's my whole preamble for this. Can we agree that having the idea that you are exclusively correct, right? So you're right and everybody else is wrong is a problem, and that moving away from that perspective would be a good direction for the country?
Yes, absolutely. That's
Okay, good.
Ryan,
Why would you think I would disagree with that?
well,
Do you
Ryan,
think I'm that high on the smell of my own farts that I just think I'm always right about everything? I've
Ryan,
changed
let me
my
ask
stance
you,
a bunch of times.
is that what you think is I mean, do you think that's the
Wow.
thing that's the most wrong with the country?
No, I didn't try and come into this saying I knew all of the reasons what's wrong with the country.
Okay.
And there is a subtext here that I thought I wasn't sure if you guys would get it, and I don't think you did. So that's fine. We can leave it for another time.
What?
I do think.
Explain your subtext, Professor, from your ivory tower. Jeez.
Nope, I'm going to leave it for a minute. Maybe I'll come
my
back to it.
gosh.
We'll see if we get to it. I think there are a lot of people who are just unwilling to compromise, right? We see this all the time. Just recently, there's been all sorts of legislation that Democrats are trying to pass, and it would actually help, I think, a lot of people. And I get that there's not always agreement on that, but a lot of times it actually will help the other side. And just because it's being proposed by Democrats, they refuse to vote in favor of it.
Oh yeah.
So it's that sense of like, we're not willing to compromise.
I'm against it because you're for it.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm getting at here is we do have 2 radical sides who just are like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to listen to you.
I don't even care
Just
if it's a
because
good
you're-
idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I just can't get behind that. And I'm not saying that that's where you are, Josh. Again,
Why
I'm
did
trying
you
to
think I would
find
agree
common
with
ground.
that?
Do you want me to drop the subtext?
Sure, because I'm not seeing it.
Okay, so if we broaden this from politics to religion,
to the rings of power.
not rings of power. I'm not bringing race up today.
I-
We're skipping
I
race for like a
I don't
month.
know where I don't know the subtext,
Sure.
right? I don't know.
The
where
subtext is religion. Both of you
Sure.
belong to a religion that is an exclusive religion that says we're right and everybody else is wrong. Not
Sure.
necessarily entirely wrong,
I see.
but you don't have all the truth. Only we have the truth. And I do think that that's part of the problem, right? That there's this underlying subtext that there are a bunch of people who are like, okay, maybe
Mormons,
not on
we're the
politics.
problem.
No, because you're not the only ones, right? There are plenty of other religions and religious people who basically are like, I can't compromise with people because you
non-religious
disagree.
atheists, you do the exact same thing. Most atheists
Nope,
are
the
far
data
more
do not
zealous.
support that.
That's such a bullcrap. Most atheists are far more
Josh,
zealous.
You
in
just
your
dropped into
non-religion-
my playground. You do not want to jump into this.
Oh,
This
here-
is
here we
literally
go.
what I study
Here we
on a
go,
daily
Professor.
basis.
Here we go.
Okay, and you can try and demean me for being a
Gosh.
professor, but I see that as a badge of
So
courage.
arrogant.
It's
Okay, let
not
me throw-
arrogant when you know the actual data.
Let-
So
Let me throw two
sorry,
things
that's
at
just
you.
reality.
But
Let me
Ryan,
throw-
do you think then you're saying, are you implying that then religion and kind of just a hardened perspective is are you attributing that to the wrong direction of the country? Is
You're
that
saying religious people are closed-minded and
No,
non-religious
I did
people
not
are
say that.
open-minded?
I get
I did
that.
not say that,
I get
and
that.
you have not read
jab
my
at
book, or
that,
you
and
would
that's
get that.
fine. But like, is that your point though?
I'm saying people who are unwilling to compromise and are unwilling to recognize other people's perspectives, whether that's in politics or religion or anything else, are
Yeah.
part of the problem. I am saying that, right? And if you had read my second book, Josh, I did not say, and this is what makes me very different from Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins, is I don't paint all the religious with one broad brush and say they're all the same. I literally look at the data, because this is what I do, and say, actually, there's a lot of diversity among the religious. I don't paint all religious people the same way. I don't think they all think the same way, because the data do not suggest that. So yeah, don't try and mischaracterize my position here, because I'm literally on record. I've published as saying, nope, there's a lot of diversity among religious people. The ones I have a problem with are the fundamentalists who are unwilling to compromise. They say there is black, there's white, and if you're not on the white side, if you're not on my side, then you should burn in hell. I can't get behind that. I have an issue with people who are like that.
Yeah, it's
I'm
hard
very
to
aware
deal
of
with
your stance
anyone that's
on
like that.
fundamentalists. I have actually read some of your writing on fundamentalism, which is saying anybody that actually believes their religion, that then you're a fundamentalist. So
Not
you're
exactly, but
pretty much, right? You're okay with religious people as long as they don't really believe it. So let me throw this at you. So when I asked for feedback on the last episode or 2 episodes ago, I'll just tell you who. Jake made this observation. He said, "Why do you think it is that only conservatives listen to this podcast, and there doesn't appear to be any liberals listening to this podcast? Could it be that conservatives are open-minded and liberals are not?" And he wasn't actually making accusations. He was making an observation. So let me throw that at you. Why are the only people that listen to our podcasts open-minded conservatives? Where's all the liberals?
they're not. I do have people who listen to it. I just don't talk to them on a day-to-day basis. So I get an email, a phone call, a message on Facebook once every couple of months from a couple of people I know, and I'm not going to out them. I don't think they want to be outed, right? As listening to the podcast. And all of them have said, I actually really enjoy the conversation. I'm learning a lot about conservatives. So they do appreciate it.
That's
right?
awesome.
I just don't get week to week feedback from people because they all some of them live in different countries. We've got a listener in Japan who grew up in Mountain Green. I'm not going to give any of their names, right? But he lives in Japan now and he listens to the podcast every episode. But I've got friends all over the country who are listening to it.
ありがとうございました。聞いていただきます。
I think he will appreciate that, Tom, and he will probably contact me through Facebook again and say thanks for the shout out, right? Like he knows who he is. But so there are people listening to it and they're appreciating it. So I get Jake's point, but it's just because you're talking to them a lot more than I'm talking to them. But we do have other listeners. That is true. We do have other listeners. Out of our 30 listeners, maybe 20 are conservative and 10 are progressive. I don't know.
But yeah, all right.
If we only had 1 million listeners, we could break this down and actually get some real data.
I'm actually curious. Let's do our closing arguments, because I actually don't feel like because Ryan, I don't know, you gave like world hunger and poverty and clean energy, but like I don't like what's the right direction, right? I mean, it's like, sure, fixing those things, but it's, I guess, but like that's always been, those things have existed forever, right? Poverty and child hunger, like, but right now everyone's like, oh, it's horrible, right? What is, wrap that in. I'd love for you to sprinkle that into your closing arguments.
So I did write a little bit of a preamble, but I'll use it as my quasi closing arguments here, right? I like the question that we were asked, which the question we were asked is, what is the correct direction for the country?
Right.
Not why do people think that the country is in the shitter, right? So that's where I focused. I was like, okay, what are things that I think we could all agree would be a good direction for the country? And that's why I gave the 3 that I did. So the question was phrased in a way that pushed me in that direction. But to your bigger point, right? So often we do hear about polls asking people if they think the country is heading in the wrong direction. I've never asked that in a survey. I've done a lot of surveys, right? But the reason I've never asked is because I think it's a stupid question because it's so vague. Right. We don't know what they're saying, right?
Right.
So when somebody says, yeah, I think it's headed in the wrong direction, like, one, it's easy to do, right? So it's very easy to respond on that question and be like, yep, wrong direction, right? Because they literally ask it, do you think the country's headed in the wrong direction? Yes or no, right? Strongly agree, strongly disagree. The easiest response is yes, right? It's super easy to say that. So I don't know what the question means. I don't know why people feel that way. Are people just Debbie Downers who don't, just like, this is stupid, right? I don't know. I don't know what the question means. I
guess I was looking for more than like world peace. I'm like, well, yeah, sure, of course. But how do we get there, right? What's the road? But
okay, I mean, we can have those conversations about how to alleviate poverty and kids in Hungary.
I'm curious, right? Like from your perspective, what needs to happen? And yeah, we need to solve these problems, but I guess it's like, how? Like, what do we need to be doing? Because I'm going to agree. Everybody's going to agree with you on those, at least the first 2 questions, right? And I guess all your questions, everyone's going to agree with you on those. But like, I don't know if that's. I don't know. I just like,
well, maybe that's a topic for the next time. Is like, how do we solve poverty in the U.S.? Right. And my guess is Josh and I will really not agree on this issue. Because
my solution is probably going to be like big government, right? And taking money from rich people. And
Oh.
Josh is going to be, no, let rich people donate more money and let them, write it off as a tax deduction, right? Like, I don't know Josh's perspective, but I'm guessing it's going to be less government is the solution, not more government, right?
Oh, well, you're spoiling it.
Oh, okay. Write it down. We can do that in the future, right? And we can have a really good conversation about that. I didn't think that was the purpose of the podcast tonight. So I was just like, I think we can agree on these things. And at some level, like, again, that's the purpose of the podcast, is to find the points of agreement. If it is in fact the case that like all of us think we should have no people in the US are in poverty, why do we still have close to 12% of Americans in poverty?
Well, right. And I guess the point I keep bringing up is like, we've always had people in poverty and we've always wanted to solve it, right? What does that have to do with the country going in the wrong direction? More and more people feeling like we're going in the wrong direction. Josh pretty clearly was like, it's wokeness, right? And whether you agree with that or not, I'm curious to know, well, what's the process to solve that, right? That's like, what do we need to do? And
I mean, if we look back at that graph, we have to be attacked by terrorists who fly themselves into the Twin Towers. That helped, right?
That's funny because I was going to say we need a common enemy. And I was actually going to suggest, because Josh brought up depression. What's better than depression? War.
Nuclear war.
Together.
Nuclear war.
I don't know about nuclear war. That's sort of a zero-sum game there.
Yeah, that's a nasty one.
But more where there's like the enemy's coming and we don't know where they are and everyone's just scared. Oh, we gotta band together.
So if I look at like the peaks when there was actually like an uptick in public trust in government, so this is just public trust in government, right? September 11th kind of capped a run, because at the end of Clinton's administration, if you remember, there was a big, the stock market was booming, right? Yeah. And then at like 2001, it tumbled. And that's right after September 11th too. So after September 11th, 2001, it basically just went down, right? So we need the stock market to do really, really well. People make a whole bunch of money, and we need to have a common enemy. We need somebody to attack us, right? But not like with a nuclear weapon, just a couple thousand people, and then we're good. Right. That will solve the problem. Suddenly people will be like, we're on the right track.
Maybe just nuke one city, right? Like,
which city though? Let's debate which city. Boston. Okay.
No, we need Dr. Manhattan, just a constant threat of attack.
Right.
And then it
Isn't that Putin? That is Putin. Putin
totally.
and Kim Jong-il, right? Like, we have them, but we can't seem to agree that they're a threat. So
that they're the enemy. All right. What else, Ryan?
What else? How much of a final take does he get here?
I get all the final take. No, okay. I think that was basically it. I was just like, I don't like the question. I think it's a dumb question, but we can certainly talk about, some of these specifics about what I think would be the right direction to go in. That'd be good topics for future podcasts. I didn't think about that. Josh, your turn.
Okay. So Ryan wants war. And Josh wants to end wokeness.
Pretty clear that's the left's take, because that's where we're headed. I'm actually just really fascinated by Ryan's approach tonight, because the things, I mean, he was right about the question. He actually addressed the question of which direction we should go, and I more addressed, this is why people don't think we're going in the right direction. So I'll give Ryan a compliment that he probably approached that better. And the poll questions probably is kind of silly, but if you look at what Ryan brought up poverty, and then global warming, and then he took a weird cheap shot at fundamentalists, right? That was his take to the question, which just, I'm sorry, bro, but that just seems so out of touch to me of why people would think that we're going in the wrong direction.
But that wasn't the question. Like, why do you keep crapping on me as though I answered the wrong question? The question
just gave you a compliment.
What would be the right direction? I know, and then you crapped on me, right? So it's like a backhanded compliment.
No,
way to go, smack.
No, I was trying to give you a compliment sandwich, actually.
Okay, then keep going. I'll take the other compliment on the other side.
And then...
But I don't mean that, again, I don't mean that as an attack. It just seems out of touch to think that that's what people are really worried about day to day is the global warming stuff. And and the poverty when we have all these, we are on the brink of a nuclear war.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why people are, that's why I led with not nuclear war might be a good direction. I'm not, I mean, that's half a joke, but I'm serious. We're on the brink of nuclear war.
Okay. But can I just real quick, throw something in, right? So part of the reason why we've got a 3-week break in these podcasts is because a hurricane did hit near where I live, right?
Yeah.
For the people who live 2 hours south of me, they're not worried about nuclear war right now.
Sure.
Right. I just heard away. I just heard from a student today. She has spent the entire last week, right? So last week, because we gave them time to come back, trying to help her family because her home, she lives down there, right? That's where she's from. Her family home is gone. It's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So and then the next piece is many of those people, not only are they not thinking about nuclear war because they have nothing right now, they've lost everything. They're, particularly the kids, freaking out about global warming. So this is an issue for them. And I'm not trying to give myself plaudits. That's really not the point. I'm saying, I think why individual people are bothered and saying that there are problems is really unique to the individual, right? Maybe it falls into political camps or something like that.
Sure.
But I think it's very specific to the individual. So there are some people who are in poverty. Do you think the people who are in poverty care about a nuclear war with Putin?
Right. No,
they're worried about poverty. The people who just got hammered by a hurricane, they're not worried about that nuclear war either. They're worried about global warming and the fact that if they rebuild where they built, it's going to happen again in 10 years.
That's why I led with there's exceptions to the rule. We're talking about the average citizen. I actually literally said that.
Well, and that's what because Ryan, because I agree with you, right? It's a very subjective question. You don't know what they're thinking when they answered that, but it's now 74% are saying it, right? There's a growing phenomenon that people are agreeing, and it might be, and you're probably right. It's probably a bunch of fragmentation of a bunch of different thoughts, but I'm trying to get well, what do we do? How do we, we're like, okay, country, let's all get together and turn the car around. Where do we go? Where do we drive to? Right? Because the point that they bring up, I'm always fascinated by this idea that we believe. I have no doubt that Ryan loves our country, and I have no doubt that Josh loves our country. But if I had you list out the solutions to all the problems, they're exactly the opposite, right? And which is crazy. But it's just fascinating to me. A lot of them are.
I think what we identify as the real problems is the disconnect.
Right. No, well, yeah, exactly. And that's kind of my point, because Ryan's pointing out we all know what the solutions are. We want kids to be fed and people not to be poor, and us to be have good energy and not have pollution, right? Right. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so maybe I didn't word the question well to get at what I want.
Your summary there is perfect.
We all want to know what these things are. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
We all want the utopia. Even though Jordan Peterson had this funny interview the other day where he said the first thing we would do once we had it is break it, because we need that chaos. Everybody says, I want to retire and go sip margaritas on a beach. That would last 2 hours, right?
Yeah,
you can do that for literally 2 hours, and then you go pick a fight or go get drunk or something, because nobody actually wants that.
There are some people who do, Josh. We just can't, right? There's something about our psyches that it's impossible for me to sit on a beach for more than 5 minutes before I'm losing my mind.
If I have a book, I can
well, exactly. But you're doing something on the beach. I can't lay on a beach, right? Yeah.
Anyway.
Right, Josh, did you have your closing arguments? What do you got?
You guys totally interrupted me 3 times. It was totally derailed me.
So
let me just sum it up.
To do this at the beginning.
Right. Ryan wants to fix global warming and fix poor people. I want to go destroy Russia, murder everybody in the government, and get rid of all the woke people. That's my solution.
Problem solved. Ooh, just kill all the poor people. Then they won't be poor.
Oh, dude, yeah. The agreement. Common ground right there. No, I actually Ryan makes good points. Those are obvious things to do. And I don't know how to fix a lot of the stuff I brought up. We need to restore trust in the government. How do we do that? I don't know. Apart from a revolution, and I don't want that. I would like to do this
but we do
peacefully,
know.
democratically.
No. Well, I mean, okay, I get that, but we do know some of the things that we could do. We've discussed this on the podcast. Get rid of first past the post, so a two-party system, right?
Sure.
That would help. Get rid of.
But we're not
campaign
going to do
finance.
any of that.
I know, because the parties that are in power aren't going to allow us to do it, right? So
exactly.
we agree on this. Like, these are the things we agree on. If we get rid of campaign contributions, right? So if we have government-funded elections,
we're not going to. So what do we practically do?
Again, but we know the answer.
Sure.
The question is, how do we get those two things when the people who could change it are the people who are in power? And they won't change it because they're the ones in power.
Okay, I know what we have to do. We need Tom to blow up the channel somehow so that we get millions of followers. And then we need to get really popular so we can run for president. And we'll run against each other and we'll be each other's vice president, whoever wins.
I'm fine with that. But
that's how we fix this.
Then we have to make a campaign promise that is like a contract with the American people, that is like a legally binding contract, that if we don't change the first past the post system and campaign finance, we'll commit suicide or something, right? Like, we're done.
Wow.
Seppuku.
Suicide.
Yeah, like, exactly. Seppuku. We will totally do that, right? Like, because that's the only way that it's going to happen. Because once we get into power, do you see what I'm saying? As soon as you get into power, we'll be like, dude,
you're like,
we've got all the power. Great. Why would I want to give this up? And giving it up would be, so we would have to like be that committed, right? Like, here, you guys get to implant this little button in the back of my brain that if I don't do it, you blow me up.
No, that's what would have to be 4 years unless everyone says they're satisfied.
No, the promise would be we don't run for another term. We just want one term, and we're going to
do two things.
We're going to abolish the two-party system. Gone.
I'd do it. I'd do it. I'll be your vice president any day, Josh, as long as that's our mission, right? Like,
well, that's our mission. So
we'll just
you're going to run for the Liberals. I'll get elected for the Conservatives, and then we'll have our presidential debate, and then we'll have our vice presidential debate because we're going to be each other's vice president.
Tom, can you get on that?
Here's the thing. Here's my thoughts. We're not solving that problem. I mean, and I think you guys all know that, right? It's like we're too far down that road of like reverse course, and it is corruption, right? And it's all those things that it's unfortunately we will not voluntarily solve this problem. We will be forced to address it, and we still might not solve it. But through war or severe like famine or something like that, right? That's gonna war or civil war, right? And
what form is that going to take? Because Ryan and I are actually in agreement on how to fix it. But if war happens, I'm shooting Ryan. Those are the battle lines.
Shooting me? I'm not a bad guy.
Those are the battle lines that have been drawn for us. Do you see what I'm saying?
I live in Florida too.
Right.
No, you're not going to attack Florida. Utah's going to attack California.
Who are you going to be fighting with? Arkansas? No, Alabama, right?
No, the South. I'm safe. I'm safe, right? I've got the whole buffer of the South, right?
This is a great book
because the South is basically going to go after New York and DC, right? That's where they're headed, right? So I've got a buffer because New York. What is New York going to do to Florida? Right? They've got to get through Georgia and the Carolinas and Alabama before they even bother coming to Florida.
Well, we need to war game this out.
We've drawn these battle lines.
So I'm safe. Josh, you're gonna shoot me. I'm in Florida. I'm good.
Who gets shot? Because those are the battle lines that have been drawn for us. That's why we're doing the podcast, right? Conservatives should hate liberals and liberals should hate. I mean, you talked about this in one of your points. Just because the Democrats propose something, conservatives or Republicans are going to shoot it down. Those are the battle lines,
and vice versa.
So if it comes to a revolution, I have to shoot you by default. You're wearing the blue shirt. I have to shoot you.
So are you. You're just light blue.
So but I'm asking the real question there. Do we just kill all the politicians? I don't.
Well,
to what Tom was saying.
Yeah.
How do we actually fix this? We just start.
I don't entirely disagree with what Tom was saying.
French Revolution type of thing, where we just
possibly take
all the people up at the top of the caste system and start chopping their heads off.
Well, I mean, if history gives us any we just don't we don't actually solve. We take good things and we crap all over them. We just tear them apart. That's what we do, right? And then and only times we ever band together and put away aside our differences is when we have a common foe or a bigger problem to deal with. It's exactly what Jordan Peter was saying with if we had a utopia, we'd ruin it immediately. That's what we do. Because someone wants to be better than, there's pride and greed, and someone wants a little bit more than everybody else. And so it's unfortunately, yeah, I don't think you could have a what's the word, restorer, a fixer. What's the word? Someone that's going to try and
savior.
No, I'm saying
sorry. Yes, is that where you're going?
If you got a president or someone if someone ran on the ticket of fixing everything, right?
Oh, okay.
Being what's the word?
I know what you're talking about.
They would. I don't think they would even. They couldn't. One, they would never get elected, and two, they would. There's just no one wants. There's not enough people on board to solve this, right?
I actually thought about bringing that up as one of my questions, since we're going off in the weeds here. You don't think somebody that was just good enough with, that strong of a leader could actually unify the country more than it is?
You have to run on one of the sides.
Yeah. And Reagan, very powerful,
very charismatic
and very powerful. And I think he did a lot of good. And the country is so much different than it is back then, right? If Reagan came in today, I don't even think he'd make it.
Well, that's why I had this. This is my thing with Ryan. Ryan and I have to run against each other, and then we balance each other out by being vice presidents, right?
Right. But that's what I'm saying is so I've told you the story before, right? I went to a caucus meeting because we have caucuses in Utah, and we were and I go in, and it was the year that Hatch was running, Senator Hatch was running for re-election, and there was a guy that was contending. It was Senator Lillenquist. He was a state senator, and he was running against him. And basically Hatch kind of said, make sure I don't lose this. And Hatch people showed up to the caucuses, and they were there, and the Lillenquist people were there. And they were like, okay, who's going to be the representatives that go to the state caucus and, vote on these people? And I was like, people were like, I'm Hatch guy. I'm going to vote for Hatch. I'm Hatch all the way. And I'm Lillenquist guy. I'm going for Lillenquist all the way. Right. And I was like, you know what? I want to listen to both sides. I want to hear it out. I want to I haven't decided on either way. Boom, boom, boom. I was the first guy out. We went through rounds of voting, and I was the first guy out. And I was like, and I realized, nobody wants the guy that's on the fence. They want to know where their vote's going, because they want their guy. The only reason they came is they want their guy in office, right? And they wanted so you're a Hatch guy. I want Hatch. You're my guy, right? It was I don't want you thinking about it. I don't want you, which is hilarious, because that's what a representative government is, right?
It's supposed to be.
Yes, it's supposed to be.
We will represent our
and we don't trust anyone enough. We want a democracy. We want, you're voting for him, I'm voting for you, because you're basically a proxy for me making these votes, casting these votes. Because I don't trust you. I don't trust you. I don't trust you want to change your mind. We don't believe in any of that anymore, right? We don't.
We really don't. I mean, you can see that with the actual politicians. So you guys have mentioned Andrew Yang. He is a single policy candidate, right? Yeah. He wants universal income. Lawrence Lessig has done the same thing. So he's an attorney, right, who wants basically he wants to change very specific things. That's it. He doesn't want to run for anything else. He's like, I'm going to do this one thing.
This is my thing. Yeah.
They can't get elected.
No,
they cannot get elected because of the stupid two-party system.
Yeah.
That's what has to change. And I think you're both right that it won't change of its own accord. It's going to take something bigger than that.
100%.
Isn't Tulsi Gabbard the Democrat? Isn't she? Oh wait. Nothing.
What? She just.
It was a good try, Josh.
I was hoping to get a rise out of Ryan. Tulsi left the Democrats today or yesterday.
Yes, I read that.
She did. She left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a big post about it, which
it isn't saying a lot. She was kind of a big critic.
I think she was your guys' only chance. But I was just trying to get a rise out of Ryan because I like Tulsi.
That's what's her name from Wyoming? That's like her leading the Republican
Megan
Party.
Boebert. No.
McCain.
Oh no, McCain. I was like,
yeah.
Boebert. No, okay.
No, not McCain. Not McCain.
I know who you're talking
the
about.
other vice president.
Yeah.
Cheney.
Cheney.
Yeah.
Liz Cheney.
Liz
Yeah.
Cheney. Yeah, because you're like, oh,
Though,
you're going to leave
I mean,
the
if you-
Republican Party?
Well, if you look at her voting record, she actually has a very conservative voting record.
Yeah.
She just didn't follow Trump, right? Like that's the one thing that she didn't do. And suddenly Democrats are fawning all over her because of that one thing. She stood up to Trump.
Right. And then she's like, and I'm leaving the Republican Party. And you're like, well, that's, okay.
Did Liz Cheney say she was leaving the Republican Party?
Yeah. She said if Trump got reelected, she'd leave the Republican Party. That's what she said.
Oh, I don't think she did. She just lost her primary, so she doesn't have to. She's just done. She's out.
She was just making a statement, like a threat, basically.
She's just trying to stay relevant.
Yeah, probably. All right, good. That was interesting conversation, and it was I think that was fascinating to me, some of the stuff we talked about. So thanks for everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk with you next time.
Josh, we may not always agree when it comes to politics, even though we're trying, but there is one thing we agree on. There is only one way to clean up after going to the bathroom, and that's with a Lux bidet.
I've been a proud owner of a Lux bidet for years. I have literally owned a Lux Neo 320 since 2013. That's the warm water model. Talk about happy, fun, poopy time. When I leave the bathroom, I know I'm clean and ready to talk politics in a civilized manner.
Exactly. Using a toilet without a bidet is about as uncivilized as it gets. Civil conversations demand civil hygiene practices.
And that is why our listeners should get themselves a Lux bidet.
And just to be clear, Lux is not supporting one side or the other in this podcast. They support civil conversations and clean butts.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Finding Common Battlegrounds. The music is by Ben Sound. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and not those of their employers. For more information or more episodes, you can find us at findingcommonbattlegrounds.com.